In this video, I'm going to focus on the core section of the inequalities chapter from the IGCSE syllabus. So I'm just going to open the chapter and then I'm going to go through the main things of this chapter. So in this section, you actually have the different inequality signs, and we start with the first one, which is less. If you have to visualize what less means on the number line, it means that you need to look on the left, whereas less equal to means that you need to include the number and look to the left. Greater means you look to the right hand side, and greater equal to means that you include the number and then look at the right hand side. So how does it look like in terms of representing that information on a number line now? So if you have the less sign or the greater sign, it means you are not including the number. So when it comes to drawing and shading to represent that inequality, if you have a greater or less, you draw an open circle. An open circle means that a circle which is not shaded. Whereas if you have less or equal to or greater equal to, you draw a circle and then you shade it. How does it look like in terms of drawing the number line now? I've done a couple of ones here for you. So if you have x less than 3, you basically draw a number line and then you put a couple of numbers leading till 3. So if I have to shade less than 3, I would write 1 to 3. Then since it's less, I draw an open circle, and less means shade to the left, so I'm shading to the left. All right. Whereas in number 2, I have x less than 4, so I draw a number line whereby I stop at 4. So I'm writing 1, 2, 3, 4 here. But if you want to include more numbers to the left hand side, you could actually have 0, you can have -1, that's up to you. So x less or equal to 4 means that you have to include the 4 because it's less or equal to 4. So you draw a circle at 4 and then you shade it because you have the equal sign, and less means left hand side, so I'm shading on the left hand side. Number 3, x greater than -2, so I draw -2. An open circle because we don't have the equal sign, and greater means to the right hand side, so I'm shading on the right hand side. X greater or equal to -1, so I have -1. Since I have the equal sign, I draw the circle and I shade it, and greater means to the right hand side, so I'm shading on the right hand side. Okay, so the main things to consider is less means left, shade to the left, greater means shade to the right. If you have an equal sign, then when you're drawing the circle, you're shading it. If you don't have the equal sign, you're not shading the circle. So these are the key things. Now, sometimes you have compound inequalities, meaning you have more than one information in that statement. All right, and basically, if you have x, in this case we're using x. If you have an unknown which lies between two numbers, then we use and, okay, to write down the solution. So we use and, which can be represented by the intersection sign. Whereas if we have a solution which is a union of the solutions of two inequalities, meaning if they are in two different directions, then we use or in the statement, or we use the union sign. And we're going to represent that in the two questions here. So here you have x greater than 1 and less equal to 5. So I draw my number line. It's starting with 1, ending with 5. That's the first thing I do. With the 1, there's no equal sign, so it's an open circle, not shaded. With the 5, it's less or equal to, so it's a circle which is shaded. And it's between 1 and 5, so I just shade whatever is in the middle. So it's between 1 and 5. When I'm phrasing it as a statement, it's between 1 and 5. So and means intersection. So you could write it that way, x greater than 1 and x less equal to 5, or you can write it with the intersection sign. So instead of using the word and, you can actually use the intersection sign. That's up to you. If we look at a statement whereby they are going to different directions, and we need to use or union, that's exactly number 2. So in number 2, you have x less or equal to -2 and then x more than 3. And these are going in two different directions. Let us take one by one at a time. So x less or equal to -2. So since you have the equal sign, I'm going to draw an open circle and shade it. And it's less, so I'm shading on the left. For the other one, it's x more than 3, so I have an open circle at 3. Since I don't have an inequality which includes the 3, so it's going to be an open circle where the circle is not shaded on the 3. And greater means you're shading on the right hand side. Okay, I've put a couple of notes to help you here. So when we have greater than 1 and less equal to 5, we're actually excluding the 1 because we don't have the equal, and we're including the 5. So I've written it here, include 5, exclude 1. And when we're including the 5, we need to consider it, so that's why I'm shading it. For the other one, it's x less or equal to -2, so I'm including the -2. X more than 3, so I'm excluding the 3. So since I'm excluding 3, it's not shaded. Since I'm including -2, it is shaded. Okay, so I've tried to give you the key pointers so that you can use them to construct your inequalities. If you go through the worksheet, it shows you how to solve. So solving is like solving equations. However, with inequalities, you just need to be careful with the signs, meaning when you're dividing by a minus number or multiplying by 1, the sign changes. So maybe I can show you how to solve these two on the board now. So I'm going to take the first one, 2x minus 3 less than 7. So let's try this one together. So I have 2x minus 3 less than 7. So you treat it as an equation. Okay, so you can move the -3 to the other side, becomes plus 3. So I get 2x less than 10. Then I'm going to move the 2, so here it's times 2. If I move it to the right hand side, it becomes divided by 2. So I get x less than 5. Okay, and if they ask you to represent that on a number line, you have 5 here, less than 5, so you don't have the equal sign. So you're going to draw an open circle and not include the 5. Let's look at the second one. So the second one was 2 minus 4x greater or equal to 12. 2 minus 4x greater or equal to 12. So for this one, I'm going to send the 2 to the right hand side. So plus 2, if I send it there, it becomes minus 2. And then 12 minus 2 gives you 10. However, what happens here, if you need to find x, all right, you need to send the minus 4 to the right hand side. So it's times minus 4 on the left. If you send it to the right hand side, it becomes divided by minus 4. And what you need to remember for inequality is, it is that if you're dividing by a negative number, the sign changes. So it becomes the reverse of what it was initially. So greater equal to becomes less equal to. So this becomes, you can divide by 2. You can divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2 here. I get minus 5 over 2. And if I have to represent that on a number line, minus 5 over 2, since you have the inclusion sign, I have to shade the circle. And then less means you shade to the left hand side. Okay, so when you divide by minus, the sign changes. That's what you need to remember. So in terms of notes, you can write down that if you divide or you multiply by a negative number, okay, the sign is reversed. Reverse means that if it's greater, it becomes less. If it's less, it becomes greater. All right. Now, why is that the case? I can show it to you in a logical way. For example, if I write this statement, 1 is less than 2. We can all agree with that because 1 is smaller than 2 on the number line, right? However, if I multiply by minus 1 on both sides, I get minus 1, I get minus 2. Can I actually keep the sign as less? Is minus 1 less than minus 2? If I try to complete my number line, I have 0 here. I have -1, and then I have -2. So actually -1 is more than -2. You see? So what happens is that when you're multiplying by -1, the relationship between the two numbers changes. Okay? And I showed it to you on the number line. When I'm multiplying by -1, I'm getting -1, -2. If I keep the less sign, it's not making sense, because -1 is more than -2. Because as I move from left to right on the number line, it increases, right? So -1 is more than -2. So this is why we have this as a rule. When I'm multiplying or I'm dividing by a negative number, the sign changes. So that's what you'll have to remember when you're working with inequalities. It's a very important characteristic you need to know. Okay, so I think I've given you a good enough explanation to actually use with this chapter. I've explained to you how to construct the number lines with the shading, and I've also shown you the key thing about solving inequality, which is that when you're dividing or multiplying by a negative number, the sign should change. Now it's up to you to practice these questions. There are a couple of questions here, and there are answers also to these questions, and an explanation. But I've done the explanation for you in the previous section where I've drawn it, whereas the explanation here is actually in words. So you can check the previous explanation to really understand what to do. And there are practice questions here with 3 different levels which you can do so that you understand it further. All right, I hope that this was helpful for you.